So I will call this meeting to order at 3:06. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you all. Just so you know, my laptop has a funny little hiccup where sometimes it kicks me into mute. And so if it does that, I just need to go into my settings and unmute myself. So it'll just take me a second. So if that happens, I'll take care of it. Okay, as we gather today, I would like to acknowledge the traditional territories and oral practices of the Blackfoot Nations, which includes the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. All right, everyone has the agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda. Andrea, those in favor?
Nope. And we have any discussion on that?
The challenge with this in a special meeting is if not all trustee, and correct me if I'm wrong, Allison, or anyone, but if we don't have all trustees present, we cannot change an agenda.
Correct. I just have a question in regards
to
sure. The current situation that we're in. So my understanding from other boards is that the only business that can be conducted by a board during a strike is any business that would get us closer to ending strike action or business that is required to carry on the business of our organization at the time that's required. So that was just a question that I would like to pose in regards to the agenda that is here. If these items are all things that are necessary to do during while we have current strike action and are required for us to get closer to getting our students back in classrooms.
Can I ask where that directive is coming from?
That's governance. Like, that's just when you're in a strike, that's what you do. You don't deal with other business. So
okay, I will open that up to discussion from the board. I'll open that up for input. I know I certainly know Kyle, the number 3 Galbraith scope change. Kyle has expressed that that is an emergent letter that he is needing, and so certainly I would say that that is an essential piece. We have delegated things to this agenda knowing that the strike was a potential reality and there wasn't concern brought up at that time. So I'll just open it up to discussion. Craig.
And actually, I did bring it up as concern last week when we met on Tuesday.
Okay, thank you, Allison. Thank you. Craig.
This is, as far as I'm concerned, this is part of our regular, we need to get these policies done so that the new board coming in doesn't have to deal with it because they have no background on this. And therefore, this was a vital part of our organization, and yeah, and we need to deal with it.
Andrea.
I agree. We definitely need to do the Galbraith scope change and the policies, and open to discussion about the school fees as being not as emergent.
Jenny.
Can I visibly raise my hand? Do I just do my thing?
Yeah, no, you're visible. Go ahead. No, I'm fine with that. Yep.
Okay. I can appreciate that we're limited while there's a strike action in being able to gather feedback. And so I think for as far as governance goes, anything that would require us to need to be able to go back to administrators or to teachers or to students and gather feedback, that we don't have that ability right now. As far as what I look at on this agenda, the school fees policy, I think we're still just talking as a board. We're not to that feedback process yet. And so I'd be okay to keep talking about that. And then the policy, I think we're still, I guess we're in second reading. So I'm not sure if there's really a space where we'd be operating outside of the board feedback. So I think I'm okay. Yeah, if Andrea, if your feeling is you'd prefer to remove school fees, I'm okay with postponing that conversation. Because I think I think the intention of what we were trying to do was to just establish some of the, like, what consensus does this current board want to pass on to the next board, but the next board will look at all the same information and draw their own consensuses anyways. And so if we'd rather postpone that until, you know, operations are as normal, I can appreciate that. So I'm open to, that's in response to my motion. So I'm open to removing that and postponing that if that's the feeling of the board. I'm also comfortable talking about it, so.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. Allison.
So when I did bring it up last Tuesday, I had requested that it be looked at to see what we can and can't. So I would at this time actually like to call through our superintendent on our governance advisor, associate superintendent, Kyle, to potentially provide us any advice or knowledge that he knows in regards to strike, knowing I don't have something official to present. That's why I brought it up last week, and I bring it up today again to ensure that we are respecting the fact that we don't have students in classrooms and we don't have our teachers in classrooms. And I want to ensure that we are doing what we should be or not should not be doing. And I would request that information through our superintendent.
Yeah, thanks, Allison. And Brian, just to bring you up to speed, we're just having a conversation about board meetings during a strike. You know, the information I've been given from legal is that there's no reason that we couldn't have a board meeting that we would normally have during a strike. So that's what we've been given from legal. But since we have Brian here, Brian, have you heard a different perspective from that?
No, and as a matter of fact, to my fellow colleagues, I have to go to a board meeting at 5 o'clock. So I think we're all trying to do as much of our legal work as we can. We will reconvene in an org meeting on the 29th of October. But until we go to the polls, we are still a legal board of trustees for whatever emergency that may arise. So that's the position we're taking, Mike. So thank you for sharing that.
So can I just ask for clarification on that, Christine?
Yes, go ahead.
Brian, when you say to deal with any emergencies that we have, it's only emergencies, or what business can you?
I didn't mean to say it that way, Allison, in terms of bells and whistles, but just regular business of the board that cannot be delayed.
Okay, so if it can't be delayed, then to deal with it currently.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, and I certainly open it up to the board. I think that as a board, we have expressed that, well, we moved the omnibus to this meeting because people wanted to complete it prior to the end of our term. I also hear Allison in that, you know, we have labor action in front of us and we do have a lot of information to receive and some discussion to have on that. And I certainly don't want to lose time on that because of the other items on our board. And so I think this is a good discussion to have. Jenny, thank you for your feedback on your willingness to pull school fees policy if that is the desire of the board. Just confirmation, Jenny, are you are you willing to pull the omnibus conversation as well, or just the fees?
I would be open. I mean, I'd be interested to hear thoughts from the board on that one. I guess I kind of feel in the same place where we've done some work, and that either that work will carry forward as it is, or it'll be tweaked today and then carry forward. I think it's a work that's still in process.
Yeah.
From my own perspective, I don't see it as being ready for both second and third reading today.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I'm jumping ahead, but for myself, because that's my opinion on it, either way, we're passing on something that's in progress. So I'm open to hearing the board.
Okay. Thank you, Jenny. Okay. Christina, do you have thoughts?
I appreciate Allison bringing it forward. I think I'm okay to go ahead with these items. I believe that they are like required for the operation and urgent for it. And I would agree. Maybe the school fees one, maybe not so much, but the other ones I think are important. And yeah, I'm good to go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And Craig, to confirm, you are good to go ahead or good to pull?
No, I'm good to go ahead.
Thank you. Andrea?
I actually thought of a question. Oh, sorry.
Having heard what Mike and Brian said, I'm good to go ahead with the school fees as well, if that's the wish of everybody. I just think that one was not as emergent before I heard that direction. So.
Okay. Thank you. Jenny?
Sorry, I should ask a quick question of Mike. For the school fees, if we postpone that conversation and making some of that progress on that, does that fit in a timeline where changes, because I know we're kind of in contention with policy and practice when it comes to school fees. And so if we don't make progress today, are we still okay time-wise for administrators to be able to make any adjustments if that's where that leads to?
No, because we won't be able to get a policy done, but I don't think we were ever trying to get the policy done here today. We started that work. There's a motion on the board from you in May to work on policy. I've provided that policy and some other things. So the plan was today just to try and get on the original plan was on sort of a committee of the whole, but that's changed a little bit and it became a special meeting. And so, we just wanted to work with the board and leave something for the next board to say, here's some things that we worked on, here's what we have in terms of policy, suggested policy, that sort of thing. So it was never going to be that we were going to get the policy done today. It was more just providing some work for the next board and having an opportunity to have that conversation. Does that make sense and answer your question, Jenny, or not really?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. No, I know we weren't making any change to policy on that one today. I just know when we've looked at it, we've kind of identified that the policy is mostly good, and kind of where the problem is actually in practice more than it is in policy. And so, no,
the policy is not, the current policy is not where we'd like it to be based on the board's
right.
Perspective, that sort of thing. So
okay.
I
know what you mean.
Your motion from May was that the board update policy 802.2 school fees to include direction and guidance, which reflects and supports the overarching philosophies and values of this board and effectively supports division operations. We've had a draft one on the books or in the hands of trustees for a while, and it's just a matter of kind of going over that and going over whatever we want to discuss with school fees. So again, it really is a board decision. And I'm sorry, and I'll just add quickly on the overall conversation. Our legal, the legal advice that we have is that you know, yes, there's a strike going on, and yes, it's a very serious situation. Certainly boards can choose not to do business or decide to do emergent business only, but certainly board administration can keep working on things. So I think based on the information we have, it's a decision really that we can make what we want to work on. If this board says we don't want to work on it now, that's fine. And yeah, Jenny, I think ultimately, the current policy needs to be updated, and that'll be part of the process with the next board for sure. And it definitely won't get fully updated today. It's more just being able to say, are we directionally correct here with this board? And can we say this board looked at this and thought, yeah, this is kind of the direction you want to head in, but the new board can tweak it and change it, that sort of thing. So kind of up to you guys what you'd like to do on that. I don't think it's a hard and fast rule on this one. I'm happy to talk about it. We've definitely done some work on it over the last few months, but if that creates discomfort and you just don't feel great about that, no big deal.
Yeah, no, I had another motion in June that was about the board holding conversation. So I think you read my May motion, I think, did you?
Correct. Yeah, that May motion is still on the board.
Yeah, so I had another one. I passed another motion in June in our meeting the next month. And that's kind of the one I was more referring to, which is exactly what you described, which was just that we kind of established, because as we had that conversation back in June to try to make progress on that May motion, what we realized is we just need a common understanding, some common philosophy for this board. And so I guess what the question I was trying to ask is, as that's developed, so we'll push that back. Anyways, it doesn't matter. We can push it back, or we'll just try to do what we can do. We can push it, or we can talk about it today. Whatever the board wants to do.
Allison.
I just want to say that I appreciate being able to have this discussion. I think that it's important. I'm fine with the rationale that's been given for the topics and whichever direction we choose to go. But I think it is extremely important that as a board, we've had this discussion so that when we are asked or approached, that we can give rationale for what and why these things are on our agenda and why they were business that we dealt with. So I appreciate the input from everybody, from legal through Mike, as well as Brian's information, and then everybody's feedback in terms of why they feel it's important for us to go ahead. So I appreciate that, and I'm okay with it. I just want to make sure that we all have the same understanding.
Thank you, Allison. I appreciate that. And I think as a team, I will encourage us to be as efficient and as we're able in expressing ourselves in the conversation of the items. There isn't a majority that is wanting to remove, so we'll keep them on. But if we can be as efficient as we're able to, and I think especially to protect the time of conversation, the conversation around the labor update that we're needing, that would be appreciated without, of course, diluting the conversations of the items that are before us. Okay. So we will move on to number 3, the Galbraith scope change. Kyle, I will tag this off to you.
Thank you. So just a little background, I'm sure everybody's aware, but back in 2023, the school division did receive the capital announcement for planning funds for the modernization of Galbraith School. So we've been through this for the past 2 years of what the planning design does look like that. As part of the design phase, we're now at the point where it's been determined from a cost feasibility and a structural layout of the existing building. A modernization of Galbraith is not a feasible or recommended approach going forward. From that, it has been recommended that we look at changing the scope to essentially a replacement of Galbraith while maintaining the original 1912-ish facade of the building to maintain that historical context. For the school division to proceed like that way, Alberta Education has requested a letter from the board outlining that request. So I do have my recommendation that the board chair sign a letter on behalf of the board requesting the scope change. Be happy to take any questions from there.
Thank you, Kyle. Christina.
I just want to, per my trustee responsibilities, declare that I have a bit of a conflict or potential conflict in that my employer has a application in related to the Galbraith renovation. It's not pertaining to this specific piece, but I do have somewhat of a conflict there. So in this case, I do feel like I can still participate in the conversation. It has no material interest on the application, but to be transparent.
Thank you. And with that declaration, I am going to look to board members to see support in Christina participating in the conversation and voting. Can I have a hands up if you support her continuing to participate in this conversation?
I believe that she needs to make that decision herself if she feels that she's in conflict of interest position.
Okay.
And I feel that she can make that decision on her own, knowing that what we're going to be talking about today and the role of her position.
Okay. Is everyone in agreement with that? Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other questions for Kyle? Andrea.
Hi, Kyle. I've seen some of those plans, and I know they were taking down the part that's added on to the 100-plus-year-old building. But are you describing that they would essentially gut the inside of that 100-year-plus building and keep the rest of the bricks around it and then build within it? Is that what they mean?
Yeah, and it's essentially like if you were, how we get to the finished product isn't quite yet determined. But if you focus on maybe the intention of what the finished product would be, is that, you know, that iconic brick facade of the building. There's different ways we're looking at maintaining that. Not sure exactly which the best approach is, but maintaining that, and essentially everything behind that would be a brand new school.
Sorry, they would still be taking down the addition, I imagine.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so as long as that brick structure around it stays, that's the part that I would need to know. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and that's what we're, because that's the iconic part of Galbraith that we're definitely planning to maintain.
Craig.
There we go. As much as I'd like to maintain the facade, if you're building a new school, which is the least disruptive to the students? Because in my mind, if you're keeping the facade and you're going to build a whole new school behind it, where do the students go? Because you got to take the old school away. So my concern is, I guess, is costs. And as much as I'd like to maintain it, I want something that's the least disruptive to students and staff.
So as part of any kind of modernization or replacement, we're looking at basically phasing the project in a sense that you have particular construction phases at one point, and then you can decant the students and move the students around the school as you construct. They're still working through that process of how that exactly happens. We're not sure if that involves adding modulars onto the area yet, or if we're able to decant and do that. But that is the main point we're at now, is to ensure that we can complete the replacement while maintaining the least amount of disruption for the students and teachers at the building. But right now there essentially isn't an alternative to just do a modernization because of the way the 1960 portion is laid out. It's very inefficient and hard to move around the school, and to just update that and renovate that is kind of not solving the solution that we're intending to do. So to your point, yes, correctly, maintaining the minimal amount of disruption for students is on the top of mind for our architects and planners.
Thank you.
Christina, is your hand still up, or was that
No,
the
my
question?
question was about student disruption. Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
thank you. Andrea?
Oh, sorry, you're muted, Andrew.
You're muted, Andrea.
Sorry. Would this be a surprise to the staff, or would they know that this is the way the project is leaning? Have they been informed?
So previous design meetings have been taken with the principal and the VP at the school. So they, they are aware that, they should be aware, because they've been part of the meetings before, that, we can't basically just go in there and renovate it. And they were in supportive of that because, again, the way the 1960s layout is, you're just fixing something that doesn't work, right? So let's try to make it actually work proper.
And they know that it's not feasible to renovate the iconic part of the school then. Like
I can't speak directly for them, but I believe that they are.
Okay. And I believe that the 1960s portion would have to stay there to house students while the other side is being built. Like, I've seen that picture. I think we've all seen the picture of the addition on the other side of the iconic building before the 1960s part goes down.
Yeah, and we're still working through some of the complexities of that, but that's where it is right now, of how can we phase this properly in a manner that you can still have students in classrooms while the construction is going on. It has been somewhat challenging with the building, working in such an old school, but I know that's something that we're pushing forward really hard to make sure we have that plan figured out right away.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, Jenny.
Kyle, I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit more information. I think that because we've been in this planning phase with Galbraith for 2 years, for me at least, this comes as a surprise, and as something that we haven't heard. We've heard a lot about, the strategy for how we were going to modernize it. And so we haven't heard anything leading us to believe that might not be feasible until now. And so just wanting to understand a little bit that process, and what has the past 2 years looked like with that planning phase. And is any of that, I know that design is very, very expensive. And so wondering what was entailed in that design phase. Did we have plans made and sent to engineering, and are any of them usable anymore at this point? Like, does this set us back are we going now back to square one with design phase? So I'm wondering what level of spending we've put into design phase, and what helped us make that determination that this is no longer feasible, and if we will receive funding to match
Yeah,
the
definitely.
actual cost designed twice.
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of a background that I can speak to with my limited time here, but I believe the light bulb kind of came on a few months ago in the design team, knowing once we started getting costing back in just the existing layout, it is going to cost a significant amount more money to renovate and modernize the building than to do to rebuild it essentially from scratch. So to maintain the current approach, the scope of the budget, the original, I think it was 30 million, that would be blown through just based on how that is. And then again, the way the 1960s building is laid out, it doesn't solve a lot of the functionality aspects. And from those two combinations of thoughts coming together, it was what can we do to address those? And that's where it came to the discussion sometime in the summertime about looking at the essentially rebuilding of Galbraith. Over the past 2 years, there's been a lot of work and engagement done on this area. So a lot of the planning for that has still been able to kind of continued forward. You know, some of the aspects of what does the end product look like? How do we phase that? Some of that is still relevant that we're using. So it doesn't essentially mean we're just starting over from scratch. We're at a point in the design that our architects feel, you know, fairly good about where we are. Now we're just looking at, you know, we have an idea of what the end result is going to look like, but how do we get there in terms of the phasing and the disruption for this, in minimizing disruption from the students. So this process of essentially changing scope has come together relatively quickly. You know, it was just at the last board meeting that I, you know, kind of presented hey, this is what's happening. This is looking like a possible change. And now we're at the point where Alberta Infrastructure wants this project to move forward quickly. And we're at the point where, hey, can you guys submit a letter to Alberta Ed requesting the change? That's where we've gotten today. As far as how much money we've spent on it and whatnot, I don't entirely know. But this is, again, a lot of these projects are managed by Alberta Infrastructure. So there's sometimes the holder of the purse strings that the school division isn't managing that part of the project anymore.
So it is still being held in, because typically they're held by Alberta Infrastructure until a certain phase, and then they're dropped on us. And then we're responsible for whatever they've done up until then. And so is it still being held, those contracts and those, like Alberta Infrastructure is still holding this?
I believe so, yes. I'm not entirely certain, but that's my understanding. I'd have to double check and confirm that with you.
Yes, Alberta Infrastructure now manages the projects. Same thing with West Cooley Station. They manage the project. And so Kyle, correct me if I'm inaccurate in this, but Alberta Infrastructure has been involved in this all along. And you know, part of the planning process was to go look at the foundation and look at all those elements and see, can they do what we want to do? And, you know, just like when you renovate an old house, you discover things that, you know, you didn't expect when you start digging piles. I know they did a fair bit of digging around Galbraith, that sort of thing. And so my understanding is Alberta Infrastructure, Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong, has requested this letter and are well aware of the need for this change and are driving the bus. Am I speaking inaccurately on that, Kyle, or would that be your understanding?
You're correct. And as part of this process, you know, we work with Alberta Ed, we work with Alberta Infrastructure, we do work with our consultants and our team in-house. So this was kind of a collective process determining that the original intention of a scope was no longer feasible. How do we go about adjusting and pivoting essentially? And to do that, a formal request to the AE needs to come from the board, to which we are now. So yes, Mike, you are correct.
I see Craig's hand, and I'm also going to move us along. And Craig, I welcome your comment, and then I'm also looking for a motion. And then Allison, I see your hand for after.
Yeah, Kyle, if Alberta Ed's been involved with this from the day with Alberta Ed Infrastructure, why the necessary of a letter? And by writing a letter, does that put us back down the list, or do we stay still up there with the content to reconstruct? Is it going to be delayed, and can't Alberta Infrastructure talk to Alberta Ed and just go ahead with it?
So the reason for the letter is that any new school request or any, you know, renovation of a school, that request is always submitted from the school division as kind of like the first point of contact, right? So originally when we did request the modernization of Galbraith, that was a request submitted by Lethbridge School Division. Now that we do have a scope change, they're requesting, hey, you still have to formally request the scope change as part of the normal approval process. This isn't going to change the funding or where we are in the pecking order, because this is a project that we're moving full steam ahead. It's not going to delay anything.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Allison, your hand was up.
So I appreciate the questions from the others. They were much of the same questions that I had. I do have a couple of questions in regards to, it's obviously over 100-year-old building and there's some historic piece to it. I wouldn't be okay with not mentioning our local historian, Belinda Croson, and ensuring that we're doing some work with our historical society to ensure that whatever the plans are going forward, I'm not sure of what goes into the plan that is presented or what we move forward with, but I think ensuring that that historic piece is there is very important, and ensuring that we connect with our historians locally to have that in there. And then has there been any discussion with our local MLAs in regards to this?
There hasn't been any discussion at this level. I don't know if there has been an identified need for that at this point. But if there is any feedback, I'd be happy to receive that.
And if you're asking that back as a question, my feedback would be that I think pointing back to Craig of where are we going to fall on the list to ensure that our local MLAs are certainly pushing to ensure that if we do go ahead and approve this scope change letter to go forward for it, that we have our support of our local MLAs, that they're going to be pushing to keep us up the chain, as Craig had mentioned, where will we fall. So I think that having that MLA perspective is certainly important in this moving forward.
Yeah, and just to be clear, the direction or the feedback I've received through this process is that this isn't going to push back or delay anything. We're still proceeding relatively quickly. This is a project that has, did originally receive approval 2 years ago. So there are a lot of parties who do want to see this project expedited as quickly as possible. But if it is a request from the board, we're happy to CC and MLA as part of the letter if that is direction.
I think that would be a good addition to the letter. All right, I'm looking for a motion, please.
Oh, can I ask a question, Craig?
Yes, I'm also looking at the time, and we have 2 large items coming, as well as an in-camera item. And so I want you to be able to ask your questions, but I also want us all to be cognizant of the time that we have.
Okay, I'll just be quick. Is this a designated heritage site?
No.
It's not?
No.
Okay.
My understanding was that, Jenny, my understanding was that at the beginning of the process, we looked into it being a historical site, and that put very tight parameters on what we were able to do with the building. So we didn't pursue that. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. I just remember we talked about it, and so I just thought, oh man, we're in trouble if we're trying to do anything. Okay, and then my only other feedback would be, I struggled with this one a little bit because I had so little information and didn't understand my role in what the board is doing in this, my role in governance in this. And so, and maybe that's because in my other life, I'm immersed in building a building right now. And so this is what I'm sleeping and thinking and dreaming and eating. And so, but if we could receive more information in our package that kind of gives us some of, I think that could help us be a little bit more efficient in being able to move this through our agenda next time.
I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you, Craig. Go ahead.
I move that we direct the chair, the board chair, to write a letter to Alberta Education to change the scope of the Galbraith modernization, and that copies will be sent also to our 2 MLAs.
Thank you very much, Craig. Is there any further discussion? Andrea.
In that motion, could we make it clear that the integrity of the iconic shell of the school be maintained?
My question is that something we can definitively request, or would that come then from the expertise of the builders and their ability to do that? Like just the parameters of that.
I
Kyle?
would just say that as part of the letter that I'm working on drafting, that is definitely what we will include as part of that. Everybody on this project wants to keep that facade, so I can assure you at this time we are doing everything we can to maintain it. But again, stuff always happens during construction. So while we are trying to the best of our ability, and we fully believe we can, there is always a possibility that something can change when working on a building that's over 100 years old. So that would be my asterisk to that.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Okay, Craig has put forward the motion. Oh, Andrea?
I don't know which way to vote then, like if that is not a caveat to the motion. Because otherwise, they've got the buildings being taken down, and that's no.
I think, I mean, for myself, certainly the front of the building is historical, and certainly everybody wants to keep that. And I am satisfied with Kyle expressing this in the letter. I think if we put it in a board motion, and there is a challenge within the building, that is inhibiting it, and I think it would have to be a significant challenge to inhibit that. What then do we say? Do we say then stop the work? Do we say then we don't do that? I think there comes a point where we have to trust the professionalism of the builders and the advocacy work of our executive in the communication with this. I just don't know if putting it in a motion is going to guarantee a builder to do it if they're unable to do it. Yeah.
You can't
Kyle.
build it.
Could I maybe just to maybe provide a little more comfort on that? Two options we are exploring is if we can maintain the facade right now and rebuild behind it. There are some possible concerns if structurally that can work, one we're working on. The second option, if structurally that cannot work, that they've explored, is actually taking down it piece by piece, categorizing it, and rebuilding it. So
yeah.
There are, based on the situation that that we find ourselves with, different options we can consider. If structurally it doesn't work, we do have other options we can consider.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Mike.
Just a point of information for the board. In Kyle's memorandum, it does say it is recommended that the board chair submit a letter on behalf of Lethbridge School Division to the Minister of Alberta Education and Childcare requesting to change the scope of Galbraith Elementary School from a modernization to a replacement while maintaining the original 1912 front facade. So that was certainly in the memo, Andrea, if that's helpful.
So could that be the motion?
I'll accept what we just said. If we take the recommendation, I can just add to my motion so that it says the same thing.
Kristen, do you happen to have the original motion written down or recorded, or no?
The original motion, I was going to go back and check the recording.
I would just propose that if Trustee Craig is willing to accept that as a friendly amendment with the addition of the CCing the two MLAs, I that may be an option to solve this.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So can we just be clear on the motion then and make sure we got it? It is recommended that the board chair submit a letter on behalf of Lethbridge School Division to the Minister of Alberta Education and Childcare, CC'd to local MLAs, requesting to change the scope of Galbraith Elementary School from modernization to replacement while maintaining the original 1912 front facade. Do we capture it, Craig and Andrea and everyone else?
Yes.
Okay, there we go.
Thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? Those in favor? And that is carried. Thank you. Okay. Now we will move on to item number 4. I'm looking at the time. I know, Brian, you have to, what is the latest you are able to stay with us? Your meeting starts at 5. So when will you need to?
I have to stay till 4:30.
Certainly. Okay.
Yep.
So let's dive in and see how far this conversation will take us. We are on the draft governance policy omnibus, the second reading. In June 2025, it was moved for the second reading to occur on September 23rd. And at the September board meeting, this item was tabled. There were additions that were not done as per directed in June. And I do have to say to my board members, that was my oversight. So my apologies on that. I did have some stuff happening at the end of June and July. And so that was it's not Brian, that was Christine on that. And so we are here today for the second reading of the draft governance policy omnibus, and everyone has received the policy work that Brian has done. It was requested in September to receive the work. It was agreed to receive it a week prior, and so it was sent out on October the 1st, and then the agenda was sent out just this past Saturday. But everybody had time to read all of the policies that were included. And so, Brian, if I could lean to you to kind of begin the conversation of the work that you've done on it since our first reading, and then we can launch our conversation from there.
The way I understood the will of the board was that once there was that initial conversation based on what we will call first reading, people had the opportunity to feed commentary back through the group and to me to get ready for this. So I have taken those instructions and made the changes. In effect, they are what we'll call draft 2. Whether you go to a reading or not, that's jurisprudence and governance. That's different. So what you have here is always remember that once a board moves a document to its first reading, it becomes the baseline historical document. So what's always a bit worrisome for all of us here is, are you deleting or working from the right version when you look at your work? So that's internal. Whatever was sent to you in terms of first reading, and you had first reading, those are now the new documents of record. Now, hold that thought, because I want to go back and involve your superintendent, who was in touch with me over the summer. We did a little bit of work together. Mike had indicated he wanted to move a few other items forward that would kind of formalize this first front end section before we started to go too far into the numbering system and what comes forward in the rest of the 300s, 400s, and so on. So what you have before you is now the next foundation of the language. Okay. It's interesting, Christine, we had exchanged correspondence. I have a memo that has all the different bullet points that people wanted adjusted. They were all attended to. I know I got back to you and laid that all forward for you in time to meet the next review of your colleagues. So that's where we sit today. I then, as of today, Christine reminded me that you do have existing language on reading policy. Second reading, third reading is only permitted after a unanimous consent. The only comment I made back to your chair, and I say this with respect to the 30,000 feet of governance, nowhere else does anything that you do as a board require that high a bar. So I don't know why it got there historically. I'm just saying you guys will pass a multi-million-dollar budget on a majority. not unanimous. So what I want to lay before you is you have as a board the authority to move to multiple readings, perhaps without unanimity, which is a very high bar at this point. And the reason I'm confident in bringing it to you for consideration is that it is the foundational structure for Lethbridge Public Schools. Even if you were to move to third reading, it is still reviewable by the board as you sit today and who will be aboard in a couple of weeks. So the work and the future for more, I'm going to call it either structural change or tweaks because some of the changes are really big and I'll speak to them. Um, it is only about you. There is no one here that needs to be further consulted because you are talking about your governance. I don't want to draw any of our employee groups into this. It is not about them. It is not about anything related to relationships with government and or local governance. This is strictly your bailiwick. So hence that's where I'm coming from. That's my spirit behind that feeling. Because it's only about you, you can do what is best for you. So I wanted to give you that space to think about it. Um, Look, we're all at the polls here in 10 days, so like things are going to change no matter what. I've asked your board chair, once you've come together and had your new organizational meeting, let's see where we want to go on this project. Mike and I have had this conversation looking into the future. He has indicated to me, as he's probably indicated to you, that he will have more time on this file going forward. Now, I know he said that 3 weeks ago, and he may have changed his mind. So I allow Mike to slip off the hook if he needs to. But the bottom line is we're in a different place in our legislative journey as a group together. Where Mike was a year ago to where he is today, certain things have solidified and clarified themselves. So we're in a much different place. I've not followed exactly um, who of you are incumbents and how many are running. I'm just assuming there will be some new faces here and it'll be up to board. As I said to Christine, we have a contract that we talked about, but I've made a commitment to Christine that no matter what, we will carry on with this project if it is the will of the board, or we will bring it to closure and Mike will pick up where best he can, right? Or we'll continue to work as a team on this. So I brought the changes forward to you. They become the second reading. Um, all I'm saying here this afternoon, it's kind of hard to get into a lot of wordsmithing. A word or two will suffice, but I followed the instructions. I've created a new policy where you wanted a new policy there. Now, to tell you this, I haven't numbered them all yet until I know what the pathway is. Then I'll work back through Mike and we'll sequence them and do things like that. So don't worry about that. The other thing I want to mention is when I'm working on policy and I'm striking out and I'm adding, I'm not so worried about the numbers yet. The numbers will clarify themselves once I have what you give me as your final document, whether that's second for now or third. I will update them based on that kind of feedback because you're either going to accept or reject some of the changes that have come forward. Um, I know that I received a personal phone call from Craig. He wanted to talk to me about the alternate vice chair role. We had a good conversation on that. I've put it together for you as a new concept for your governance, and it will flesh itself out over time. What I wanted to leave you with is a structure where that person now becomes integrated into the role of the chair and the vice chair as far as possible. It's a non-moneyed position. We know that it's a learning position, and the position may only be held for a few months at a time before it rotates through, the array of membership of the board who's interested in doing it. So it's the kind of policy that will kind of grow as you live it. There weren't many places to go in the province for me to say, oh, I can look at Livingston Range. They've got the same thing. You're trying something rather innovative, and we'll let it grow. Right? It's your culture, and that's why policies are different in many different ways amongst all of our school board friends. So that's where we are today. And Madam Chair, thank you for your guidance in this. I've got your correspondence here from June 17th, I know what the omnibus was. Whatever happened with it internally, I leave that to you and the good nature of the board. Only to close with, um, this whole front end piece was heavy lifting for you all. I'm not so sure anyone has ever been as deeply involved in all those policy changes at that order of magnitude in the past. So I compliment you on your patience and stick-to-itiveness. And I know sometimes you were scratching your head. Look, we were all scratching our head, but I think we've tried to sort it out as best we can. And always know that whatever little wrinkles that still may exist, we can still continue to work on them. Our work is not over. So back to you, Madam Chair, and I'll take the instruction through you from the board.
Thank you very much, Brian. To begin discussion, I will ask for a motion to be put forward, and then we will open it up for discussion. Craig.
I so move that we discuss the second reading of the omnibus policy.
So are you moving to discuss it, or are you moving to approve it and then we have the discussion?
Okay,
so
I move that I move that we approve the second reading of our omnibus policy.
You have the motion in front of you, Craig, from the memo.
Oh, have I? Okay. Oh yeah, there, that the board move that the second reading of the draft governance policy omnibus, inclusive of divisional foundation statements, board operations, role of the trustee, role of the board chair, role of the alternate vice chair, policy development, board elections, and the role of the superintendent be accepted as presented.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So with that, we'll open it up for discussion. I know there have been some conversations outside of our board meeting regarding either some concerns or amendments that are desired. So I'll open it up to those comments. Allison.
Just have a question off the bat. Usually when we receive a policy that there's been amendments made, I certainly see in this document the amendments, the amendments that were made from the first reading, but then my understanding from an email was that there was a number of other changes that were made, and I'm just curious if there's a copy that has like the additions highlighted or the deletions struck out in a document, if that was provided at all. You're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, Allison. Brian, are you able to speak to that and just the process of your amendments?
Yeah. Once I received feedback from people, the package that I clarified with the board chair last week to meet your need to see it in a timely manner, I think I know I made the amendments, so Madam Chair, there were some policies that that had no further changes. So the first reading would have been the first reading of record. The ones that I did work on based on your memo to me, I made those and I put in those edits as you had requested them with strikeouts and color coding and things like that. So Trustee Allison, I would have hoped you got that. That would have been the totality of the work.
We got a document, but it didn't show what the changes were, the rationale for the changes besides the things that were made on the first reading. So, and I can certainly go through some of the pieces.
Yeah.
But
I think, Allison, if I may, back through the chair, Christine, add a little bit more context. When I receive a memo that gives me instruction that certain things are to be highlighted and stay and moved around and create a new policy, I don't say this to be argumentative. I don't know what the rationale behind the memo is. I would have assumed innocently that that is all the dialogue you're having back at home, and I'm not privy to it. So if somebody identifies their words or their thoughts in there, please speak to it, because I honestly don't have that information.
Okay,
And
and
just
maybe there
so,
was a memo sent that was beyond the first reading and the amendments from the first reading. I'm guessing there must have been another memo that was sent in regards to that.
the information that I sent to Brian, I don't have the date of the email in front of me, but was the amendments requested from that June 17th board meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you want, I can certainly dive in. There's changes from that first reading and the amendments that are in this document that weren't in our first one. And I started that identifying some of those pieces to you in an email last night, Christine, in regards to some
Sorry,
of
can I
those
ask you a
pieces.
question just for clarification? Just from the clarification from your email, can I ask?
Yep.
When you're talking about the first document, are you talking about the first reading document or the document emailed on Wednesday? I wasn't sure which.
The first reading.
Okay, thank you.
Really, we
Okay.
should be dealing with the first reading document with the and the first reading with the amendments, right?
No, I
And
appreciate
then
that.
and then this
I bet it is.
document
I bet it
that's
is sorry, I just bet as the one in the package was different than the one on Wednesday. And then, so I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
okay. So on the first, this is not dealing with the division foundational statement, but moving to board operations. So the first part that I see different than from our first reading, the whole number 1 elections, 1.1 mandate and the 1.2 were not included in our first reading at all. And I also see this as a duplicate. This exact 1.1 and 1.2 is also in 4.7 of this package, board elections, exactly word for word what is written here. And then my concern also is in 1.1 under mandate, and curious as to the rationale of why that's under elections when it's the mandate of the board, not so much of elections. So I'm curious as to why that would be there, if we want to start with that first few questions.
Thank you. I'm just looking through my first draft right now.
Yeah. I think, Allison, where we started many months ago was the board's desire to either move certain operational language into an appendices so that the policy itself would be, I'm going to say, shortened. I don't mean that in any negative way, other than to be succinct. Even till the very last recommendation that I received would have been to create a new policy splitting out from existing language into something that one of you here felt more desirable to have as a standalone policy. So an instruction like that, Allison, as I said earlier, I don't know the thinking of the trustee who is thinking that way, other than I see it as a bullet point on a memo to me, to make the corrections. So I'll give you an example. When we talked about the organizational meeting of the board, look, I sat in the room the last time you went through a very complicated scenario, and that's fine. Where we have landed in the future is there is actually a ministerial regulation on board meetings. So that's what I'm going to reference. That's your base document. You can't do any less than that. And if you need to get to a point where the old traditional in a tie vote, we're going to put the names in a hat, you can go to Robert's Rules of Order. It's going to tell you the same thing. So I think what we try to do is that, look, let's keep in mind that there are some what we'll call source documents behind all of this, either regulation or the Ed Act. And where it was, we weren't going to spend policy time in rewriting sections of stuff that's already there. And whether Mike has it in his briefcase at a board meeting or the board chair or the secretary treasurer does, it's all there. And I've always said to boards at a moment like that, if you need a minute, you take a 5-minute recess and you go back to the source documents and go from there. Because the goal was to look at the size and the length of some of the policies and try to tighten things up for, I guess, for the front of face for our community members trying to access information. So we didn't throw anything out. We probably replaced things or placed them in a different place. And that was all of our conversation here at the numerous times we met either in person or online. So that's where we
Yeah.
end up, Allison. So
And I understand that part. This elections part was not in here in first reading. And this elections part, we're wanting to shorten what we have. And this elections part is now in here twice. And the 1.1 mandate, I don't know that it belongs under elections.
mhm.
Can I speak to that quick? Because it's related.
Yes, please do.
I think I was the one who asked that elections be its own standalone, separate policy. That I felt like it was, at least from my notes from June, from the first reading. But I would, anyway. So I think it was me who requested that elections. To me, the rest of this all fell under kind of, this is the way the board operates. And elections was kind of separate from that this is the way elections operates. And so that was my recommendation. I don't know if the rest of the board wanted that or not, but I agree that the mandate portion, I would agree that definitely falls under the role of the board. And if the rest of the board views elections to be a part of board operations, then I would leave it in here. If not, I would say, let's put it in its own place.
Yeah. Also keep in mind too, as we get into it, normally 9 out of 10 days we live in the Education Act, but next week we're going to live under the Local Authorities Elections Act. So all I'm trying to do is remind trustees that there are many other documents that impact us. I'm going to give you an example. In the municipality of Canmore, they have a bylaw forbidding the placing of signs on public property. So the trustees in that ward need to understand that, where it doesn't impact the trustees who live in either Banff or Canmore. So all I'm saying is that once we get into an election, we're going to start with the Local Authorities Elections Act and the Education Act as two very important documents. And then from there, we have to look at any other municipal bylaws that would make how your jurisdiction is put together that would be unique from somewhere else, right? Some big cities like yourselves, you have so many names on the ballot, you're going to have 13 candidates, the first 7 or 9 or however it is, Edmonton by ward. So that's what I'm reminding us of. We have to be really cognizant of what our home turf is all about when we do things. Allison, as you say, between two colleagues, you tell me where you want it. It will go in the right place. Jenny's explained very clearly what her thinking was, and it's up to you and your colleagues then to to give me the instructions as to where to go. Open to anything, because it's all there. It's what we need to do for each other. Whether it's all in one document or that and a second policy, you'll get to live it. It's your culture.
Allison, would you like to respond or would you like to continue?
I just don't think that it should be in two places. Should be, we're providing this to another future board, and it should be in one place. And I would like to see the mandate part potentially moved up rather than, like, we have our mandate from the Education Act, and that would be the role of board and operations potentially. And I'm fine if Jenny wants it as an appendix and the election piece is pulled off as a separate one. It doesn't matter, but I just don't think it should be in here twice.
I don't follow it.
So next, if we move on to, and I don't know if anybody else has anything to say in that regard, but I can move on to the next part.
Yeah, go ahead. No hand was raised.
Okay.
Oh, mine
so
is.
moving-
Sorry, Craig. You're invisible, so I didn't see your hand.
I know.
Go ahead.
Well, I've been trying to find, can Allison tell me where the second mention of elections is? Because I can't seem to find it.
Yeah, so in your board package that you currently have for today, it's
Yeah.
4.7 board elections. When you click on number 4, so on the right-hand side of your, if you keep going down, you'll get to it again. It's near the end. It's right before the role of superintendent. So the exact same wording is in there twice.
Just a minute.
I use the feature that says bookmarks. So on the right-hand side, it says bookmarks and you can click down, but I'm not sure if you have that, Craig.
Oh, I've got 201. Is that what you're talking about? Board elections 1.1 mandate? Just before the superintendent of school roles?
It's
And
right before the
responsibility?
superintendent of school rules, but I don't believe it's 1 point. I think it's 2.
You're
Well,
right, Craig. It is. It says 201 board elections and then 1.1 mandate and then 1.2, and it's the exact same thing.
Well, I guess personally, I'd like to leave it as part of our role of Board of Operations, and maybe we can eliminate 201, whatever, 201 1.1 if it's the same wording. So
I agree. We don't need to have it twice. I think if we're going to have stuff about elections, there's a lot more to say about elections than what we have here. Like Lethbridge, for example, Brian, sorry, I didn't even raise my hand. Sorry. Can I speak?
Sorry, I was off screen. Yes, go ahead, Jenny.
Brian, the example you used, Lethbridge has that new bylaw as well. So we can't use public property even though we're running for public office. So there's my feelings on that. So a little bit the challenge is if we're going to have a document about elections, what is our responsibility to have in here? Because really for myself running again, that was my responsibility to know that. Do you know what I mean? And I certainly didn't look to our school policies to find out the rules and regulations around election. I went to the city and I went to the Elections Canada and I went to the sources that are specific to elections. So I think if we're I think that what does pertain to the board is in here, that, this actually outlines for us what we do if there's a vacancy. And that does answer a question very specific to the board. And so for myself, what I would do is I think that it's important that we hold on to 1.2. I think that's vital information. And maybe we keep that in operations, but maybe we title it vacancies on the board or something to that matter, because if we're trying to have a section just on elections, we're missing a lot of information that I don't want to be responsible for.
Yeah.
Right.
And one of the other things as a backgrounder, when the work I've done on the Local Authorities Elections Act, and we all understand this because you've also mentioned this elsewhere in your code of conduct. I say back through Mike as the figurehead for the staff, they are not to give us political advice. So if you were to go to Mike and say, so what are the sign regulations here? Mike's best answer is say, let's check with the municipality. Don't rely on us to give you election advice. And that's the candidate's responsibility. So you're right, Jenny, when you talk about a vacancy on the board. Yes, it's an actual situation. But as we approach the 20th of October, the staff are not to interpret what is applicable. Now, I'm going to give you an example. I got a phone call from a trustee in Wainwright. So we're talking our friends in Buffalo Trail. She's a sitting trustee, worked with the board for years. She went to file her papers as both a trustee candidate and a municipal councillor. And the person wouldn't take her papers. The person was in error. I opened the Electoral Act. I highlighted the section, sent it to her. She walked into that office the next day, and guess what? She's on both ballots. All I'm saying is that we as candidates have that responsibility to find out what we need to know whether it's provincial or federal or school board and that kind of stuff. And you're right, Jenny, I wouldn't want the board to feel it has to have the responsibility for getting it all right all the time, because it's not their bailiwick, right? The secretary treasurer will work with the municipalities to line up your balloting and your counting and the announcements and all that formal stuff, but it has nothing to do with us as trustees. It's all beyond arm's length. We're not supposed to be playing in it or touching it.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. Allison.
So moving on to number 2, organizational meeting.
Mhm.
First one is easy under the second reading part 2.3. It's been very typical over the last number of 4-year terms as we come to municipal election. So I would just like to see that added. I know that it says normally be for a period of 1 year. If we could add in election year, it would be until the election.
Okay, I take your
Could be
point.
added for clarity.
Yep.
And now my next point is one of the pieces where this differs quite a bit from our first reading. So I have available to me on my screen the version from June 17th. So I'm not sure if you have that version handy. But in the June 17th portion, there's a 1.4 that includes 1.4.1 all the way to 1.4.7. That entire section that was approved by this board at first reading is no longer in this version for second reading. As well, if you look in this new version for second reading, 2.4.2 was not in, actually there's a number of them that are in the 2.4 that is differing from what was in the first reading that was approved by the board there weren't amendments that the board had approved, because I have the minutes that has what was approved. So this whole section of what was in the first reading for 1.4 and 1.5 is very differing than what is in this number 2 of the 2.4, and then obviously the whole section that's missing. So I just, when I approached those questions, it was out of curiosity to find out where all these changes came from between the first reading that was approved with the amendments that are in our minutes, which is what I expected to see in second reading. And what I see here is not even remotely close to what was presented and approved by this board that sits in front of me today. So just looking for some clarity as to those pieces and where it went and how we went from first reading to second reading, and those whole sections gone and another section is different.
Now, Brian, I see like regarding the 1.4, I did note that 1.4.1 through to 1.4.7 were removed. And in the new version, you refer to the board procedures regulation of Alberta education. So are those items captured within that document?
What I was trying to do there again is to take what was, say, a longer or more wordy version and find right back where the source document was. So you see what I'm doing at the time? I'm looking at stuff that's adding to the length of the policy and saying, if that's pulled and we just make the reference to the meeting structure, if there's a regulation out there, that's the document. Because all those documents back up the Ed Act. That's what they're for. That's what the regs are. So that's where it's going.
Jenny?
Sorry, I'm trying to keep up. What's missing? Which section?
So in the first, oh, sorry, go ahead, Allison.
If you look in the first reading, the part that was passed in first reading, if you have that section in front of you, 1.4, so the entire 1.4 is not in this document, but it was approved by this board to be in the next version.
Allison, what's the main,
Okay.
Allison, what's the main title on the policy?
The main title is organizational meeting.
Okay,
So if you don't have it in front of you,
yep.
No, I do. I have it in front of me, but I don't have anything that says 1.4.
In the previous version from June 17th board meeting. So you need to look at the first reading of this was numbered differently. So the June 17th agenda package has this.
Okay, I'm looking at June 10th is what I'm looking at. June 10th doesn't have 1.4.
so on June 18th, in the first reading document, this section is if a position is contested by more than 2 candidates, a majority of the board is required to determine the successful candidate. And then 1.4.1 through to 1.4.7 has all the steps of that piece, right? Like it explicitly states the voting of the majority, if there's a tie, etc. So it delineates all of those pieces. And so between first reading and this reading, what has happened is Brian has amalgamated all of those into a statement referring us to the board procedures regulation.
So that is now the 2.3. Is that what I'm looking at now?
Sorry, I have a few different things open now.
Yeah, me too. So.
Can I think for Jenny, basically he took all of the number ones.
Yeah.
And just said, and put them under board procedure regulations, Alberta Ed. And then we just go on to number 2.2. And
did somebody ask for that change?
Well, in my view, why write down something again that's already written down? Let's just review, let's just put in the policy where you can find it. And then you go to it if you need, and part of the, as you meet as an organizational meeting, you can then bring it up, board procedures and regulations. I want to make these policies so that we're not continually rewriting stuff that's already in the government somewhere and just refer to them. So that's my take on it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And certainly we've had historical conversation on when to pare down and when we believe the written word within policy helps give clarity, right? That's what we're wanting within our policy. And so I think Brian took those words from our ongoing conversations of we want to pare down, and this was done. And then yeah. And so, okay,
and
sorry.
Allison, what was
just wait, Danny, can you hold on?
Oh,
Jenny,
sorry.
can you pause, please?
Yes, sorry.
Mike, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, trustees can go ahead and finish off their conversations, and I'll jump in. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Andrea.
Thank you. And thank you, Brian, for walking us through all of these policies. That's been awesome. I wanted to point on from organizational meeting where something at our last board meeting. I couldn't get on email today. Kyle helped me get an agenda off online, but I couldn't get into email. And in the last 2 years that I've researched now, organizational meetings, that is not where we approved the terms of reference. It said clearly on both of those documents that those are to be approved at the board meeting. And so now we missed doing that at the board meeting. It said in both of those agendas that if needed, those are to be approved at the board meeting. And so I just wanted clarification before we move on from the organizational meeting that those were indeed to have been approved at the board meeting, not at the organizational meeting.
Can you clarify that again for me, Andrea? I'm trying to pick up the nuance you have here.
Like where you've got the organizational meeting, it all makes sense to me looking at this.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
at our meeting, we did not approve the terms of reference because it was apparently somewhere in policy that we couldn't. And I was at a disadvantage because I couldn't get into my email to look at these former documents. We absolutely approved them at September meetings before. And it said in the organizational agendas that I found, if terms of references needed to be updated, they were to be done at the September board meeting. So we did not done, and I don't see any direction here. So I agree with what you've got written here, that was to have happened at an organizational meeting. It should have happened at the board meeting. So I'm fine with this, and I'm fine with the way you've pared it down. But I just wanted clarification on this because this is my last thing because I'm not running, and so I don't know where directing us that we couldn't do what we normally did in September. Having looked back now at documents, 2 of them that said if terms of references needed to be updated and approved, that should happen at the board meeting, the September board. So with how this is written, it's just that this is my swan song. So I just wanted to say to have clarification before this went through. But that's like how it's written. It doesn't say that that's to happen at the organizational meeting. So I don't know where it to be clarified. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea. And for quick context, Brian, there was a decision made at the last board meeting regarding approval of terms of reference. And Andrea, historically, this board, prior to this board, terms of reference were approved on the organizational meeting day because the organizational meeting and the very first board meeting were all held in the same day. So historically, that happens. And then this board, as a board, we moved to having 2 separate meetings in September, one organizational and then 1 main, and we shifted terms of reference approval to the public board meeting, but we didn't move policy to reflect that practice. So that's
understood now.
I just wanted to make sure that moving forward, having that impacted our board meeting for me quite significantly, because I will be gone. So just want that clarified in this document so that it doesn't happen to somebody again.
Thank you, Andrea. Allison.
Can you, Christine, I know you said that section from the first reading, the 1.4 is in regulation. Which regulation are you referring to? Like, what are you seeing that you're saying you're referring to?
Sorry. Okay, I have to pull up the right screen.
Yeah, I'd have to look back in my files. Allison,
So
there's
I have it, Brian. So
you got it? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so in the new, the second reading version, number 2, organizational meeting, under 2.1, an organizational meeting of the board shall be held annually, ... And then under that first paragraph, the second paragraph says that organizational meeting protocols shall be those contained in the board procedures regulation, Alberta education. So that's where that's captured.
Okay, so that's when I'm reading the board procedures regulation under organizational meeting, it just says that they must be held annually and when it takes place, and the secretary of board must give notice of the organizational meeting, and that is it. So anything that is in 1.4 that this board that sits in front of me approved in first reading is not anywhere in board procedure regulation. So just curious if you know somewhere else that would be referring to, that you're stating it's somewhere else.
That was the regulation that I was referring to as per the policy provided. And certainly if if it is important to, I mean, we approved these points, 1.4.1 through to 1.4.7. If board members would like those instated into this document, we can certainly do that.
Yeah, that's all. It's just a matter of knowing where the home is. Either the regulation or we want a little bit of cutting and pasting of the regulation right into your policy. Either way.
I think I'm just confused as to how we go from what was approved at first reading to my colleagues sitting around the table okay that it's just gone. Like, it was important enough for those that voted in favor of this to have it in there in first reading. It certainly has come into play when we've had voting for at our organizational meetings. And I don't hear any response from anybody else around the board table that did vote in favor of having this in first reading, where you guys are at with this totally being removed from second reading. So I'm just looking from around the room that I've spent time going through this to look at this document, and I just would like to hear from other trustees that we're about to approve a very important document going forward to a new board. And it was okay and we needed it in the first reading, but now we're okay that it's not in the second reading. I'm confused. If you could say it any other way, like, help me understand other trustees that did vote in favor of having this in the first time and are okay for it the second time to be gone.
Thank you, Allison. Christina, and then we'll need to say goodbye to Brian.
Also, I can appreciate the attempt to sort of like understand the pathway and like what pieces are important and what pieces are not, and what pieces have changed and not. I just had to take a moment actually, and I just like went back and looked at the information from our June meeting, because I remember we had this exact conversation of like, what are we going to change, what are we going to keep, what's going to go past the first reading, what has to change before the second reading, to confirm it, because I'm feeling surprised that you feel surprised that things have changed, when that was the conversation in June, that if we passed it at the first reading, that there are things that need to change and that there was work to be done over the summer, much of which was done by email per the request. Almost no response to the chair to meet in the summer, which was the request to work on it. Like, we put in a lot of time between each session with Brian in order to try to provide that information. So I'm not surprised that things have changed. I'm fine to see things keep moving and trying to like find the right fit. Yeah, so just in terms of like, are we aware things changed? I feel like, yes, things have changed because we asked for many things to change and there was communication about that. I still think there's like individual pieces that we can work through. I always struggle doing this at board meetings when we've attempted to set up working sessions to do this. So like, I'm not prepared to pass this today, unfortunately, despite like my very strong desire to move forward through these particular procedures or these particular policies, because I do believe they are like the board ones that we committed to do. I'm not going to be like passing them. I'm not going to vote for it because I don't think that they're ready either, but not because they shouldn't have changed from the first reading, if that makes sense.
And I think that's fine if they change, but I'm just asking for some rationale from others around the table of why we're okay that it changed. So just looking for that rationale. I'm not hearing that rationale if somebody made that change.
So prior to me calling on the next person, Brian, I know you have a board meeting in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I think it's
Yeah.
important that we allow you to go and prepare for that.
Yeah.
Yes. So do you have any closing remarks for our board at this time?
Well, as I say, you know, the work has moved along, and sometimes you get an impression of where the board wants to go on things, and we followed up as best we could, given the nature of engagement of each one of you individually. Now, whether you emailed your thoughts to each other or back through Christine or over to me, I can't say that. I can tell you that there's a trustee on here tonight who phoned me. That's it. I hear him, he hears me. I understand it. It's not my responsibility then to report back to all of you, but I do report to the board chair. See, always go back to my board chair. So all I'm saying is that work continued along a desire to tighten up policies. Let's not have them as big Word documents that were confusing to the constituents. And but we who are now on the board understand that there are regulations. Mike can pull up legal documents. You can pull them up. They're online. So yes, in a sense, mothers and fathers will not know all of this. We don't expect them to, but we know we have to be able to access those documents. So instead of the policy being 10 pages, it's 4 pages. And we left it at that. So that's kind of the rationale for how we work together as a group. As Mike and I emailed stuff all summer, I said, Mike, it's up to you what you do with it. Here's my input. I leave the next step in governance over to you, as I did with Christine. So if our work is still there,
let me clarify
Yeah.
on that, Brian. Sorry to interrupt. I'm helping to work on policy 300 and 400, but I
Yeah.
haven't been super involved in the 200 section.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt, but
No, that's
certainly
fine.
continue
Yeah.
on. I know you're going to go, and I wanted to make sure that was stated
Yeah.
before you
Yeah.
left. I do potentially have some information on how we might have ended up with the regulation thing here. If you want me to share that before Brian goes, because this might resonate
Please.
with you, Brian. I look in the minutes for June, and it says 1.4.1 correct reference to regulation. And as I look, the old regulation, there's a reference to regulation 5.3. If you look in the board procedures regulation, there is no 5.3. It's actually trying to refer to 6.3 of the policy. But I wonder if maybe part of the conversation around we want to lessen the policy and refer back to the source documentation. It was perceived as correct reference to the regulation, the board procedure regulation. Because Allison, you're right on that. That's where I think the miscommunication get that. And Brian, you certainly acknowledge that board procedure regulation doesn't lay out. That's the nuts and bolts of. I remember when I first became superintendent and had to chair the first organizational meeting, I referred to that section so I knew kind of what I needed to do, right? And the regulation, the Education Act regulation, isn't going to tell me what to do. It was really embedded in the policy. So that's what you're saying, Allison. I think maybe, Brian, there just might have been in there, I think, because the board has definitely been clear, and I think rightfully so, if we can refer back to regulation or Education Act, we should do that because it simplifies things. But I suspect the term regulation, because when I first looked at it, I'm like, oh, what's regulation 5.3 in the board procedure regulation? I looked and I saw there is no 5.3. That's curious. And then I looked, well, what is this 5.3 that they're referring to? And then I figured out. So that's a long-winded way to say, Allison, that may not answer your question, but that's kind of, I can tell you that's what I did as I looked at it. So, so it's possible that that's where the wires got crossed a little bit there.
Thanks, Mike.
But I am speculating, and sorry to interrupt you, Brian. I just know time is short for you.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Brian, I'll let you duck out whenever you need to, but I do want to say thank you for your work and thank you for your willing to join us today. And after this meeting, I can I'll connect with you on the decision of the board moving forward.
Yeah, we're good. As I say, this is it's complicated work, and I know it might cause some frustration for people. All I can do is say, let's all be patient. We're going to get this done, and we'll take it from there. So, Madam Chair, thank you, everybody, and hopefully we're going to loop back around on this, and and keep this process going. It's very important work. So, thank you for that. Okay, thanks for
Thank you very much. Okay, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
We'll talk soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm looking at the time and I'm reflecting on the conversation that we have had, and I feel that if we were to go ahead and vote. One, I do not believe this would be successful. And I think two, if our second reading would not be successful. And I also think that it is not ready for second reading. There is clearly a lot of conversation that still needs to happen. And I think we do not have the time for that today. And we would serve the next board well to allow them second and third reading and just the decision as that new board to decide what they would like to do. So I'm putting forward a recommendation to rescind the motion to accept second reading. And so I'm looking for feedback on that. Kyle.
Sorry, I maybe spoke too quickly. I'll let the board discuss. I would just say that with Craig making the motion, sorry, I'll pause. I spoke too quick.
If I need guidance, you're like the associate superintendent of guidance. So that is,
Yeah,
you are welcome.
yeah, Kyle will just jump in terms of how to officially rescind the motion once the board is, if that's the direction that the board wants to go on. Go down, go down, not go on.
Okay, thank you. Craig, I know this was the motion that you made. I just appreciate, I will appreciate feedback from board members on this.
Can I speak?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm inviting you to please speak. Yeah.
First of all, I appreciate the fact that we discussed it as a motion and not just idle conversation, which we've done over the last 4 years. A lot of our meetings have been wasted because we talked before we made a motion. So secondly, I don't mind if we rescind it. I do have some concerns about policy development, which I was going to bring up. But obviously, we do not have a board that's united in moving it forward. And so we'll let the new board do it. I do feel that, and this is my own personal feeling, we could have had this done a lot sooner and a lot faster if we would have got together sooner and decided. That was one of my main concerns at the start of 4 years, and we still haven't got anywhere really. And it bothers me. In a previous board, we were able to redo all of our policies, all 27 of them, in 5 months. And we've been working on this for a year and a half. So it doesn't really speak well to our board. And I will take part of the responsibility. I was part of this board and I haven't done my job, due diligence to get these policies moved forward. I want to express my appreciation to Brian for his help in this and for Mike in helping us. But I am extremely disappointed. But I will rescind the motion. I move to rescind the motion.
So, Kyle, I'm looking at you through the screen. Is that all Craig needs to do?
Yeah, I would say with the motion on the table, the board has two options. One is to vote on the motion and reject it. But if Craig would like to withdraw his motion, that is an appropriate alternative.
So with rescinding the motion, does there need to be included in that a desire to bring it forward at a certain time? Because that will then fall under the next board. Or do we just leave it as a motion in the agenda, in the motion tracker, and then the new board picks that up when they're ready to do that? How do we handle that?
Totally. So my recommendation is Trustee Whitehead has rescinded his motion, so we're still have an action item on the agenda. So the next thing would be to, if the board is interested, making a motion to table this to a further date or further time. Okay. If there isn't a desire to vote on the second reading.
Okay, so it will, so then just to clarify, it will come up on the November board meeting automatically.
It can be specified to be tabled to the next board meeting for the next board to look at is probably the best bet here, and then the next board can decide the appropriate action for the timeline of how they proceed.
Okay.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay.
It does. Craig, are you able to capture that?
Yep. Oh, just a minute. I move that we table the, get the right word, the governance policy omnibus motion be tabled to the next board meeting, which will take place in November.
Okay. Is that good, Kyle? Okay. Jenny, I see your hand up.
Okay, so normally if we were not in the middle of election, my thoughts right now would be, what I'm hearing and what I've heard a lot of, that we're spending a lot of time on, is comparing previous to right now and what changed and why did it change, and hold on, let me follow along. And so what I would, under normal circumstances, say is perhaps it would be helpful for us. We've not been successful in being able to do a working day. And so with code of conduct, when we got stuck in process for that, it seemed helpful that we had a live document that we were each able to edit and make edits and visible to each other and different colors. And we were able to give rationale to that. And that was really helpful and useful. That's what I would normally have said, hey, why don't we do that again with this? But recognizing that we're in an election, that makes us in a weird position. And so my question becomes, with us placing this on the agenda for November, how does it make progress before that November meeting?
I think my understanding, Jenny, like we don't have the time to complete this omnibus, correct? And
Totally.
so we're not going to have that. So then the two options we have are, okay, so say we put forward, we vote on the motion for second reading and it happens to pass. I don't think it would, but it happens to pass. And then third reading goes to the new board, right? And I don't see confidence in our group to be able to do that well and say, we presented you with the great third reading, right? I think there's still conversation and work that I'm hearing and understanding that needs to be done for it to be a fulsome document that is helpful. I know it's not where we wanted to land as a board. We wanted to be able to set a new board up with success. I think to have it move to the November board meeting, it then empowers the new board to choose to table this for when they want to, right? So then it can come onto their agenda and they can say, we want to table it till January, or we want to table it till March. And so I think it just gives them the ability to kind of to own it. We're essentially we're passing the baton on this.
Okay. Yeah, that answers my question, because I agree with what we're deciding to do here. I just felt like, oh, if we're asking them to do it in November, are we setting them up for success either?
Oh yeah.
So, like by attaching it to November, that was my question, was I don't know how they're gonna be
just
prepared.
so it doesn't get lost. Yeah, just so it doesn't get lost, Jenny. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. A motion is on. Yes, Andrea.
You mean to the November meeting, or do you mean to the October meeting? Do you mean to push it one more forward so that they have some onboarding and could maybe have a committee of the whole before they get to the November?
This is, sorry.
Because there is a board meeting in October. That would be their first board meeting. But you mean to table it to November so they get onboarding and could get some,
certainly. Yeah, I think
for November.
I think it's,
or do you mean to October, or do you mean to November?
I believe we mean to November. I think it would be a lot. I don't know that it would be responsible to have on day one of a board taking their oath, sitting at a board table, not having read the documentation or knowing the context, to then be presented to vote or to make a decision on what tabling is etc. Right? So no, the November board meeting is the correct choice, I believe.
And I don't know how much governance we can extend to the new board, but maybe that could be the topic at the next committee of the whole then.
Yeah.
That they chance to talk with Brian and go through it so they could be ready in November.
Yeah, and certainly, well, certainly if there are incumbent trustees and it is the will of that board to move the work forward, that can happen. And so that is the thing, when you pass the baton to the next board, you lose the power and the ownership of those decisions. And then you have to trust the will of the next board, right? And for them to capture their mission and their goals.
And I so disappointed that we didn't get this done, because it was me that called this, that we could try and get the second and the third. But anyway, my phone might die, so if I do disappear, you'll know why. But
okay.
Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, Andrea.
To do this.
Thank you, Andrea. Craig and then Allison.
Oh, okay. One of the jobs, and I think this relates to it, is as our board comes to an end, it's the responsibility of our superintendent to bring back to the board some of the issues that were still outstanding from our previous board. So I have faith that Mike will bring up that we were working on policies and that we were trying to get a bunch of them done. We ran out of time, and that I'm speaking for Mike, but I hope he feels the same, is that these policies are important to get done, and that we have a goal, and most school boards have a goal, to reduce the number of policies and change some of them into procedures. So I have faith that Mike will bring that up to the new board, and that the new board will see some common sense in that.
And Craig, I can just respond and say, yes, I certainly would. We do have the motion tracker and that sort of thing, but that would be something that I would, certainly bring forward as our conversation, because I think it's well known, and then the next board can make the decision if that's the direction they want to go, and that'll be up to them. Sorry, Allison, I jumped in on you and don't want to interrupt trustee time.
Go ahead, Allison.
That's okay. I just wanted to say that it would be probably very beneficial for the next board that when we're seeing these changes, that if they could be tracked changes so that it is much easier going forward, and it would reduce a lot of frustration and confusion, and it would communicate clearly what changes were there, and we wouldn't need to be switching back. So that would be a huge piece of advice that I think moving forward would be very important.
No, I appreciate that, Allison, and I do need to share that. I will share that has been communicated repeatedly, that has been a request. And has not it just hasn't been modeled the way that we do it. And I certainly know that Mike has modeled that in his school fees work, right? And where his 300 work, where that has come from. So yes, that will be a conversation that we will continue it. Thank you. Okay, a motion is on the table to rescind second reading. Those in favor? Oh, Craig and Andrea, can you turn your screens on, please? Andrea, if you can hear me, can you turn your screen on, please? Okay. Okay, we will go ahead with the vote. Those in favor? And that is carried. Kristen, can you just make note that Andrea was not present for the vote?
Will do, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you for the discussion. And now we will move on. We have an hour left. We have the school fees policy. And then we also have labor action discussion. And so certainly if we're going to have a conversation on school fees policy, I would like to cap it. Mike, how long do we need for the labor conversation?
I'm not sure. It'll depend on questions that trustees have. You know, I've probably got a 5 to 10 minute update. And then it's just a matter of how many questions we have.
Okay, thank you. Jenny?
Do you want to just rearrange our agenda and go in camera for that first and then come out for whatever time is left for school fees?
And can you just clarify, you said that we have another hour. I have the meeting booked in my calendar that this was 2 hours. So I will need to switch off my camera if I'm gonna continue on this meeting, because I only have it booked for 2. That's what's in our calendars.
Oh, my understanding it was 3 to 6. Am I the only one that was understanding that?
I think
The
we
calendar
talked about it
invite.
being 3 to 6, but the calendar invite didn't reflect it. I think
Oh, okay.
on Friday, we did talk about it needing an extra hour.
Yeah. And then that
I
just
will,
didn't get, okay.
I will
Okay.
switch to no camera, and
Okay.
I may not be able to respond
Okay.
all the time. Thanks.
Apologies for that, Allison. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so would board members be supportive of moving to in camera to discuss labor relations, and then should we have time go back to school fees? Craig, that's what you're suggesting, correct, Jenny?
I'm saying that might be a good strategy given our time constraints.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Craig?
Yes. Yes to Jenny.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, I will ask for a motion to go in camera, please. Jenny, thank you. Those in favor? And that's carried. We are in camera at 5:02. So Jenny passed a motion to have discussion on what our connected priorities are. Mike has done a really fantastic job bringing together information on a draft fees policy. Oh, sorry, here we go. Something on my screen. All right, a draft fees policy. We have a color-coded one that we were requested to read again. We've reviewed this one before as a board. We have a school fees draft policy or notes on sources of where each of the lines have come from, and then one before us without any coloring, without any notes, and just what it would look like. So, Mike, I saw your hand is up. Did you want to start us off?
Or yeah, I'm certainly happy just to provide some background and kind of some general, here's what what I was thinking, but of course the board may want to go in a different direction, but just to kind of provide a little bit of background before we get into it, if that's okay. Awesome. I'm reading your lips. That looked like you said, sure, that's okay. Yeah, okay, thumbs up. So, as you well know, we've had lots of debate and discussion around school fees, certainly an area that you as trustees are very interested in, certainly an area that we know our school communities are interested in, and still lots of work to do. There has been some work done, and Jenny, to your question earlier, there has been work done on policy and procedure in the last year, but we identified some real needs as we had some conversations, in particular to up our game in terms of what we're doing with the policy and really spending some time on the foundational elements of what do we actually believe about school fees. And so as we discussed earlier, and I know you had that motion in May 2026 that we would update the policy 802.2 school fees to include direction and guidance, which reflects and supports an overarching philosophy and values of the board. I know you and myself in June have both sort of led some discussions regarding that. So that work has been going on. We have provided a draft policy that hopefully we'll get a bit of a chance to talk about. But today, you had asked the question about kind of timing, Jenny, and I was just looking back to sort of a draft work plan that we put together in June to talk about this work. And we talked about having a policy kind of ready kind of January-ish. So the assumption was, just like you talked about, you were bang on, the assumption was that this is work that we would leave for the next board and they would have to decide if they wanted to move forward. We thought that this was a reasonable time in year. So, you know, if the concern was, are we delaying that work? And no, we're okay. But we also recognize it seems like January is a long time off, but with a new board trying to get oriented and trying to, you know, just figure out their job and how to work together, the more work we could do on our end to leave with them to say, hey, here's the direction we're going in, that might be helpful. And just like you've talked about a lot, getting those foundational beliefs and those foundational ideas down, I think are absolutely essential. So I guess the short answer is, we're okay in terms of the timeline still, although I think it is going to be a little challenging to get it done. I think whatever we do here today, I think we can, I think will be beneficial for the next board potentially. So, and I'm certainly happy to bring that conversation forward because I know it's something that's important to folks. So yeah, so I can, you know, Jenny, I don't know if you want to jump in now and talk a little bit about some of your thoughts, or if you want me to keep going, because my next step, if I'm going to keep going, I'll probably just share my screen and we'll kind of go through what the draft policy would look like, some of the documents we've put together, get your perspective on it, see if in particular some of the foundational beliefs are accurate and if you like the general direction or not. And we can go from there. However, Jenny, in particular, if there's something you want to talk about, because I know you have done some work in this area too, then by all means, take the conversation wherever you think is appropriate.
I think that's a great way to proceed. A good strategy. I think you've given us some really good working documents here to go off of. And my only thought as I reviewed things again would be, I don't think this is necessarily the time for us to get into really specific wordsmithing, even though that's my favorite. But we're not looking to put this into the next agenda as a policy to approve. I think the intention was just for us to say, hey, does this capture the philosophies this board has been discussing? And is it in line with those? So let's just keep it really high level, would be my thought. And then, you know, is there any of those ideas or philosophies or notions that are missing and then or need to be, you know, talked about further, would be my thought as we go through it.
Yeah, sounds great. So do you want me, I can share my screen and so everyone's kind of looking at the same thing and we can kind of go over some of this and just have some conversations and see if we're directionally correct and especially some of the beliefs part. Yeah.
Let's do that. Yeah.
If people have already read it, I would launch right into any questions or comments.
Yeah.
Because we only have 15 minutes. But if we need to read it together, then I think that's okay too.
I would like to say we've all had it for several months, and so I'm hoping that everybody has read through it. And so I think we could probably start, like, Mike, if you want to guide us through sections, and then we can give feedback of what fits and what doesn't. Would that work? Or am I curtailing what you thought would happen today?
You are not curtailing anything. I'm totally comfortable with that. Yeah, totally good with that.
Okay. Just because I know Jenny requested, you know, dialogue, and one of them was about the beliefs and the values. And so certainly you've captured seven values in that section. So I think for us to be able to respond to what those values are, and if there's anything to be easier rather than having an open dialogue, not grounded in anything, to look at the values and say, is there something that's missing? Is there something that isn't communicated as clearly as you would like? That might be a good starting point.
Perfect. I'm just going to share screen here, and I'm assuming that everybody can see that.
Yep.
And so this is just a draft policy. And remember, we're working on starting our policies broad and then getting more narrow. And so this one, and I've just got in the purple bold text, it kind of says where things came from. Are they brand new, or did we take them from previous policies, or is it directly from the regulation, that sort of thing. So this is school fees, possible policy update V5, September 28, 2025, where from. And I have to tell you, when you look at it, to my horror, I noticed a typo that I must have cut and pasted multiple times. It refers back to the regulation, and it should say school fees regulation, and it says school council regulation. So I've changed it in this document, but if you see school council regulation, it's just Mike not having the ability to cut and paste properly. So to start off with, I don't think these beliefs are perfect, and I'd be really interested to hear, like, what are we missing here? Because this is generally what we talked about, but it's definitely not everything. And this is a great example of governance to really scrutinize some of the language in here, and are we capturing it directionally correct? So I'll just open it up to the board if there's any, and all this first part is new. It's just kind of based on some of our conversations. And then this last sentence is taken from the current policy. So go ahead, whatever you want to share. It looks like Christina's up.
Christina.
Thank you so much for all the work on this. The only one that kind of stuck out to me was just, I think the last one about the reasonably consistent across the division. Is maybe like a little less meaty than I would want to see it. Like I think, like, I recognize the importance of the autonomy, but I think the balance across division was a really important part for the board. Like I just come back to the example of like recorders. Like, it's a recorder. If we're all sourcing them, it should be the same price everywhere. Like, I understand like sports were different because there was a reason, because they're in different divisions, etc. But I just worry about it being a little bit couched in like school autonomy, which doesn't solve any of the problems that we see across the division, which is, I think, a big priority from the board. That was my only kind of one. Everything else is like really direct and clarifies what I'm hoping to see clarified. So.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback. Yeah, there's a great example of one that it's like, I don't think this is quite worded right and may not capture the will of the board. So that's a good one and would be pretty easy to change.
Honestly, I would just separate them personally. Like, not to get into the wordy, thanks, Jenny, not wordsmithy, but to me, they're just different values. Like, one is consistency, one is school autonomy where reasonable or like explainable.
Yeah. Jenny.
Oh, sorry, I should take my hand down. She stole the words right out of my mouth. That was what I had written down, is I think those are two different ideas. So I think we need to recognize the school's need for autonomy, and then we also need to, and I think you clarify it. It is a little bit more meaty down below, I thought, with where the cost or whatever it is, I don't know, you have it the right words below, but where it makes sense, we've made fees consistent. And yeah. So I think that, yeah, some wordsmithing there, and I think that capture that idea that we really are looking for some uniform fees wherever possible across the division.
Yeah, I think that's a big one.
I felt like the second statement, whenever possible, fees should not be charged. I think that that one is a little bit. I appreciated below where you have it stated as efforts to keep fees low. Like right below it just says wherever they need to be charged. I would, as an educator, I would, with that second one in there, I would be hesitant to present ideas if they had fees associated. And so I don't know if that makes them feel that loss of autonomy. I appreciate the notion of it, that we're trying to keep fees low, really is what we're trying to do. But I think as a board, we do actually recognize the need for fees. And so I would be comfortable removing that second bullet point, because I do think there is circumstances where charging fees is appropriate and is fair, and without that you don't have sports programs and you don't have field trips and you don't have these things. And I don't think as a board we're trying to take those things out of the system either.
Appreciate that. And I also should have mentioned, like, I've got no concerns with you suggesting big changes to this or it's not directionally correct. So yeah, you certainly won't insult me with any changes or anything like that. So yeah, I'm good with that too. I think as I read it now, I look at it and go, those two are almost sort of redundant. And yeah, so I think it's already been addressed. Like, it's a school fee policy and it says, yeah, you may charge fees. It's one of the first things sometimes. So yeah, that seems logical to me. Looks like Andrea has a question, then Jenny. You're just on mute, Andrea.
Sorry. I was wondering if we could add, so that people know that there is a possibility for fees to be waived. Under the, when fees are rationale for charging those fees, and something about a fee waiver and refund process in place. Like, so right up front, people know that fees could be waived for reasons.
So Andrea, my question is, if you look at 2.2, no student shall be denied access to programs or basic educational services due to an inability to pay enhanced educational service fees. Would that cover that, or are you looking for something more?
Well, I was just kind of looking at
and then if you look at 2.3, so then look at 2.3, Andrea. Fees may be waived by the principal or administrative designate, ... I won't read the whole thing. I don't need to read the whole thing. But would that section cover that for you?
Okay, and I probably, because I've gone back.
Mike, could you change the screen to show that? It's just the second page.
Sorry, because I went on to Rocky View just because.
There we go. It's right there. Andrea, it's right on the screen. That's what I'm talking to. That's what I'm speaking to. Would that capture what you're looking for?
Yes, it would. I just kind of do like the way Rocky View has their beliefs as a background and then guidelines, boom, 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 boom. So you can find it. But I so appreciate all the work that you've done, Mike, and the way you highlighted in purple where this came from, and it's perfect. And Jenny, all of your thoughts too were excellent.
Yeah, and to your point, Andrea, and Jenny may want to speak to this. I've definitely heard, there is some interest in, and for good reason, like making sure families know that, hey, if you can't pay, there is a process in place. So theoretically, it could be in the beliefs as well, and then more detail in the actually regulations of the policy. So I don't think it can, whatever the board wants to do on that, but I would definitely say this. We could wordsmith something in there to have pretty general, just so people know right off the start that, hey, this is something the board believes in, that if you can't pay, there is a process that we can work through with you. So yeah, go ahead, Jenny.
Sorry, Andrea, were you done?
I just wanted to answer that and say I would really appreciate that, because I think that if parents can see that right away, then it, relieves their heart. And that was the thing that we were the most worried about, was to have children be on a level playing field. So if they can see that right up front, that's our belief. The further up the ladder you can put it, the better.
I think that the note I made when I read through it was, you've got it written there. Sorry, I'm reading off my tiny screen. Oh, fees should not hinder division students from accessing education. I would love it if we added opportunity or involvement, because I think we're asking that our fees don't hinder them just from accessing education, but we want them to be able to participate, whatever that looks like. And so we don't want the parent who says her son can't try out for volleyball because it costs $500, and for that student to not have access to being on the volleyball team, and even pursuing potential opportunities down the road for them as an athlete or anything like that, but even just to participate and be a part of things. So I would love it if we had a statement that just acknowledged, we don't want fees to hinder students from participation or education. And I don't know if we need a statement there about, where barriers to payment for fees, where, something along the lines of a strategy exists for identifying and addressing barriers to fee payment, something along those lines. You could, our belief statement could be vague and say, strategy is in place for identifying and addressing barriers in fee payments. And then, we just want to make sure that whatever we say, it holds dignity for those that find themselves needing to address that. Because I think a large portion of that, the way it's written, sounds like it's identified and approached through the administration instead of parents recognizing their ability to go and ask. Was kind of the sense I got as I read the whole policy, is we need to represent that there is a system there, and or there will be, or whatever that looks like, so that parents know to go and ask rather than waiting to be offered, I think.
Yeah, and you probably can't see me. I'm nodding away here, but I had my screen shared. So yeah, Christine, go ahead.
Thank you. So, Jenny, I appreciate the amendment. I think the question that I have with that, I would like to know what would be the unintended consequence of a large number of students unable to participate in, a various amount of activities. I stand behind this value. My question is, in the worst case scenario of a whole team wanting to participate, can we afford this value, right? And so I would appreciate information on that, feedback from admin, even on average, how many students do request financial aid, and how many are they aware of students that would like to ask but don't, because of the barrier of asking and the shame of asking. So I think that would be good information for us to have, because my caution, even though I agree with this statement, is that we put it in and then we have X number of so many students that say we can't afford it. So therefore, but we still want to do it. Policy says we can still do it. Can schools afford to do that? So I just want to see that full picture. And then I have an operations question. In, the 13 years I've been a parent in this division, I have no recollection in this moment. When we give fees information at the beginning of year to students and parents, which has been me for the past 13 years, is there, do we give a school fees information sheet letting them know? I know there's like a fire hose of things to sign, but is there a form given that explains school fees and their ability to ask for subsidy or assistance? And would that be an option rather than, I'm just thinking we need it in, sure, it's good to have in policy. How many people go to the policy to actually look for that information, right? So
Yeah, and if you're okay with me responding, it's a great question, and I don't know specifically, but as all of you were talking, because I agree. We have to look at what's the impact of operations. So I think our job is to start broad. Is that a value that's important to us? I think I've heard from the board it is. Then you're exactly right. If you look at the policy right now in terms of waiving of fees, so we could make a general statement, and then we've got a more specific statement in the policy, but then you're 100% right, Christine. Like this is the connection of that broad governance perspective down to operations. So the board has said this is important. The board have said we expect you to have strategies. This is where it's going to be. Now we have to align those practices to meet with the board, and that's a great example because that captures the spirit of it. If it's not just something that's buried in a policy collecting dust, that it's actually there as part of when people go for school fees. They know that that's part of it. So yeah, that's a great question. It probably does become a procedure operational thing once we've got our policy, once we feel good about that. And I honestly, I wouldn't be able to give you a good accurate answer on that right now. So
that's fine. And if anybody should know, I should. So
yeah. But I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of we're starting on this is what we believe. And then once we do that and we have that policy good, then it's operations job to align it. And if we're not aligning it effectively, then the board comes back and says, this is in policy. Why isn't this aligned? Why isn't this alignment happening? And are we asking for the right thing? Are we not clear? Or, is Mike not doing his job on this one? So, and those are all valid questions. So anyways, that's a long aside to saying, I appreciate the conversation. I've definitely heard that's the heart of the board to make sure that people, have that opportunity and know about it. And then we can guide operations. So I can adjust that a little bit. And I think I can capture the spirit of that. Is what I'm saying. And then, Craig and Jenny.
Well, I like the conversation as it goes. My concern is, I hope that we don't have parents filling out a form beforehand and that the coaches know of that, and then the child isn't allowed to play because he can't afford it. I hope that we're basing it on ability. And so I'm a little leery about when that form should be processed, because I want all kids to have access to the best of their ability to make a team and not judged on whether you have the money or not. So as long as we have that, I kind of go along with the conversation, but we have to make sure that these kids aren't hindered before they even try out.
Jenny, looks like you're up. Thanks for that, Craig. And again, that's very similar to Christine's. Now, once we get that belief, I think the board's been very clear on what they believe, and now we got to operationally align with that belief. So go ahead, Jenny.
I don't see Allison on here anymore, but I remember I went through when I was writing the email, I went through everyone's notes and my notes from everyone's comments on these conversations. And she brought up a few times, returning fees that aren't used. I don't know if that is a thing or not, or if that is a concern that people are thinking that schools are building reserves based off parent fees. I don't know. I'll just make that. I don't know where to go with that, but it's in my email. It said development of a system for returning unused fees because I showed up in my notes a few times. So I'll just give it to you to do with what you will, because that wasn't my concern, so I can't speak further to it other than I tried to capture what everybody said. I do know my own experience. I was under the impression that anything I put into school cash online was gone. Like one time I bought play tickets to one of my kids' plays and I bought the wrong day by accident, so I called the school to say, hey, I have 7 tickets for the wrong day that somebody can have. So just so you know, they've been paid for and please give them out. And they said, well, why don't we just refund you? I had no idea they could. So I don't know if that's what she's talking about. I don't know, but I'll just make note of it because it was in my notes. So.
Yeah, that's a great, and I have that noted too, and it's definitely a conversation to have. And I think when we look at the beliefs where that falls under is fees must be utilized for the specific purpose for which they were collected. And you're exactly right. Then that gets into what happens to those fees in those situations. So it's a really good question. I think one that we have to have more clarity and transparency on for sure.
Thanks. Thank you for all your work on this and for capturing everything that we've talked about so well and giving us a path to be effective. So thank you.
Yeah, I think we've got a start anyways. And
I think it's a good start.
Yeah, I'm also cognizant of the time here, Christine. So from my perspective, I feel pretty comfortable that I've heard from the board that we've discussed it. I know you've reviewed it, and thank you so much for doing that and taking the time to do that. And so we can say that directionally, this is where the board was at. This is kind of where we were going. And then the next board can say, yeah, we like it. We like that direction, or no, we don't. And the feedback that I'm hearing, because Allison's point earlier about doing strike throughs and noting the changes, one of the challenges when you make so many big changes to a policy like this, you're just pulling from different spots. Doing strike throughs just makes the document a bit of a nightmare. And I always like to have one clean copy so people can look at the strike throughs. And so that's why we've gone back and done the purple bold. So we can say, well, this is where this came from. This is where this came from. So trustees can fairly easily reference back the source document, that sort of thing. So that's working for you? I'm hearing, I'm seeing nods that, yeah, that's not a bad way to go.
Yep, I think it's great. It's clear.
Excellent. Okay. I feel good about, I think, we've met the spirit of Jenny's May motion for sure. I feel comfortable, I could say that. And I also feel like we have something for the next board to look at, and there's some work there that they can dig their teeth into if they so choose.
Yeah, I think so as well. Thank you everyone for your contributions today. Thank you, Mike, for sharing this information with us again today. And I'm glad we were able to affirm the direction that you were going in. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right. It is 6. Yeah, Andrea.
I wanted to say, and Robbie, maybe you could send me a picture later, but we did get the buffalo painting up and the trees for Spirit of 51 and the shadow boxes. And we would have seen them in real life today if we could have been there, but
love it.
They're getting there, Andrea. They're up and they are slowly progressing. We're working on it.
Awesome. So when you get it all, do send a picture, and it was an
And get the hair oil.
Yeah. So last meeting, farewell. Best wishes in your election. Love you all.
Thank you. And Andrea, thank you. This is your last meeting, Andrea, ever.
Last. Look, I'm going to take you a screenshot. Everyone smile.
With teeth.
With teeth.
Smile with teeth. Thank you. It was a privilege. And thank you for all your kind words. Wish you all well in the election.
Thank you,
You're
Andrea.
all going to do amazingly. So best wishes.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for your time today. Christina, have a good sleep. You made it. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you were able to join us today. Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
Oh, officially adjourning at, okay, 6:09.
Okay, 6:09. Boom.
Thanks.
Bye. Thanks, Kyle. See ya.